This video is not a joke. It's not a troll. I am genuinely interested and think that Sentinels have done something that is worth their support. And I also truly believe that pretty much every other team in NA and a majority of the EMEA teams are absolutely giga trolling. This comes back to something that I've talked about before, but now we have some more information about, and that is academy teams. Because Riot finally revealed who has academy teams and who doesn't. And you can see that one of the teams that does, the only NA team that does, is Sentinels. And I'm going to today talk about why this is a big win, and I think is a very good idea, and why all the other NA teams who aren't doing it are trolling. So first, let's just explain why I think Riot has changed the rules to allow academy teams for the first time. And the main reason is, I think, they probably thought before, hey, we don't want to get in the way of these other tier 2 teams who are trying to ascend. Obviously, the academy teams can't ascend. They can't get relegated. They can't ascend. They are just stuck in tier 2. And I think a lot of people, if an academy team finished top of their league, you know, might feel like, oh, you know, that's a shame because those guys who are good enough to play in tier 1 potentially can't because they're part of an academy team. But Riot, I think this year has basically just said, hey, there's a lot of orgs leaving tier 2, so one way of kind of filling the numbers and have people signed and actually getting paid to play in tier 2 is to just let academy teams be a thing. And I think overall it is a good decision. And I do think there's something interesting we can potentially read into as well of who did get an academy team, because obviously we've only got 3 here in EMEA. There's 5 in Americas, but 4 out of the 5 are from South America here, and there's 9 in Pacific, right? So everyone apart from Paper Rex, who's a full-time tier 1 partner team in Pacific, has an academy team as well, right? So there kind of seems to be a bit of a cutoff between kind of South America and Pacific versus North America and EMEA. So why is that the case? Well, in some cases, I think perhaps for the South America teams and some of the Pacific teams as well, there's perhaps more of a kind of nationalistic fan base, you know, within that doesn't maybe exist as much in NA or as it does in EMEA either. So that might be one reason. For instance, global esports, I think, are a great example of this is a perfect opportunity for global esports, right? They are a team that has kind of struggled. Do we go with an Indian roster? Do we not? Well, this is a way of global to have an Indian team and still be developing Indian talent in tier 2 and, you know, still be able to say, hey, look, we're still supporting the Indian scene, whilst also trying to compete with a non-Indian roster, you know, in tier 1 and see if they can do better this season. So I think for a lot of these teams, particularly global, it might make some sense in that capacity. But of course, really, we're here to glaze Sentinels as the only NA team to have an academy. And I'm going to talk about why it's such a good idea and why everyone else is trolling. Because not only are you supporting the scene, right? That's the first thing we can talk about here, that obviously having an academy is good for the scene, right? It's more people getting paid to play Valorant. And I think for Sentinels, who are, you know, perhaps the face of at least Western Valorant, you know, it makes sense for them to invest in the scene and want to help the scene because it's kind of, you know, the game that they are known for at this point. So that's the first thing. But the second thing, and really the main reason why having an academy is such a good idea, is because it's going to help your team a hell of a lot if you know what you are doing. Now, this is something that I have talked about before in the past, but really you need to understand that this is a potentially massive, massive deal. Right, there is only one team that I know of in Valorant's history who hasn't kind of been trolling the way that they practice, and that is EG. EG signed a 10-man roster in 2023, and that meant that they could run in-house scrims with their 5 starting roster against their 5 on the reserve roster. And in those scrims, they can be incredibly more efficient with their time than every other VCT team has before or since. And it is no surprise to me the EG perhaps improved in one season's time way more than any other team has, again, before or since. Let me give you a quick example of why those in-house scrims are so much better, so much more efficient, right? Let's say that we've got a weakness on defending the B site on bind, right? That we find that our numbers, when, you know, the opponents do a B exec, we aren't doing very well, we're losing a lot of those rounds. Well, if we run a normal scrim that takes, let's say, an hour, how many times are we going to be defending B against a B exec from our opponents? Maybe 5, maybe 6 in an hour. So we maybe get 6 reps in a whole hour session of working on the thing that we really want to work on. Well, if you say it takes maybe 2 minutes to do a BXEC and then reset it back up and do it again, well, then we can run 30 in an hour in an in-house scrim versus only 6 or 5 or 6 in a normal scrim. And this has annoyed me for as long as I have been in kind of the Valorant scene. The teams just aren't effectively practicing, and they're incredibly inefficient with their time when they just constantly run normal scrims, right? I did a whole master's degree in football coaching and analysis and spent a whole year reading literature about how to be the most efficient with your time and good coaching practices and all of that. And if you read any of it, none of it will say just keep running scrims. And that is where these academy teams can come in and essentially act like that EG 10-man roster. Because for your academy team, they can't get promoted or relegated anyway in tier 2. So their results don't really matter that much, right? Really what matters to them is getting better and maybe helping your tier 1 team as well, right? Like that's what you should be using these academy teams for. Now, I do think I am going to give, some of these Pacific teams a pass, and maybe some of the South American teams a pass as well, right? In that it actually might be harder for them to get this main benefit from their academy team because, they're going to be based in like LA for the Americas teams, but their, academy teams are probably going to be in South America. Same for some of, like global esports, their academy team's going to be in India, they'll be in Korea, right? So the ping might not be great, might not be efficient to actually do that, right? Which is why this is even more annoying that really the teams that should be doing this the most, the ones that won't have any ping difficulties when they go to have their in-house scrims, i.e. the EMEA teams and the North American teams, those are the teams that should want academy teams the most. And yet those are the teams that don't have them. This is why this is so perplexing to me. It doesn't make any sense. And this is a massive, massive chance for Sentinels to absolutely rip everyone else apart. Because in Americas, they should be literally the only team who can get this advantage. And this should be, if they know what they're doing, a massive advantage. Not only can they be massively more efficient with their time and work on their weaknesses, but also they can get their academy team to act as the scout team for whoever they are playing next. They should have an absolutely massive advantage over the other, particularly North American teams. And look, I know that these orgs who don't have academy teams will say, oh, it just costs too much to run an academy team. I think that's absolute nonsense, to be honest, because, well, there's enough teams doing it that, it's not completely unviable because there's actually already a lot of teams doing it, including an Ascension team who is a small org. And also, the academy team will benefit your team greatly, giving you a much better chance of making it to champs, selling more skins because you're a good team, and it will probably outstrip the cost of having an academy team many, many times over. So yes, I am very, very glad that Sentinels have decided to be the only NA team to have an academy team. I think it's a very, very good decision on their behalf, and I hope that the teams, Liquid, Koi, Kami Core, Sentinels, any of the other teams who can potentially do it, that you do run in-house scrims, because again, it is going to be incredibly beneficial to you, and like EG did, hopefully you'll see the results of going from potentially what EG were, not very good at the start of the season, to, world champions.